Want to know why? Ask how. I've been asked not to shout this. Howard the Humongous. I want to talk to you about something called locus of control. It has a little bit to do with Elliot Rodger, or at least the Elliot Rodger shootings in Santa Barbara, brought a little bit of this to light, and also some of the correspondence I got on my screed, my rave about junk food and the fact that there is no such thing as junk food. There is just junk eating. There is eating foods out of proportion. There's not maintaining a balance in your diet. Too much of any good thing is a poison. The point that I was making was that you could take anything and eat it in excess and it would do enormous damage. Morgan Spurlock did a film, Super Size Me, and if I've got the film correct, he ate nothing but McDonald's food for a month, and it made him sick. Well, guess what? Take the healthiest food there is. Take an apple. Eat only apples for a month. Then make a video at the end of the month or a film about what has happened to you as a result of eating apples. You will be incredibly, miserably sick. The problem isn't with the food. The problem is with the balance. And balance comes from an infrastructure of habit. It comes from something called self-discipline. And despite all of the arguments about whether there is or is not free will, we do have self-discipline. I was accused in the messages, the comments that came in on my junk food piece of never having experienced a problem with eating, of being skinny all of my life. And in a sense, that's true. A lot of people do have genes that predispose them to have a much larger body than mine. But the fact is, you can maintain control over your life. It's up to you to determine the balance of the foods you eat so that everything you eat, even a Big Mac on a Saturday night, contributes to your nutrition. How do I know this personally? When I was 19 years old, I went on a search for the form of enlightenment promised by Zen Buddhist Satori. And I went after every single one of what I considered to be my defense mechanisms. Every single one of the things that seemed to stand between me and some silent little flame deep inside of you that produces your spontaneity and your creativity. And in the process, I identified having one regular room in which I slept as an ego defense. Eating, because I looked forward to it tremendously. I was at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. They were giving us 2,400 pages of reading a week, isolated in a carrel in the library. Reading 2,400 pages, that's a torture. So I looked forward with incredible eagerness to the 3 meals that came a day. And when I was doing my Zen Buddhist Satori seeking, anything that I sought as a refuge had to go. So I stopped sleeping in just one room. I started using a blanket, a sleeping roll, carrying it around and sleeping on the floor of the library at night after the building had been locked when nobody knew I was there, sleeping on the floor of dormitories in the public spaces, sleeping wherever I could find a place and never sleeping at a regular hour. And I also stopped that pattern that we're all trained to of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I ate at random times. Again, the attempt was to achieve Satori, enlightenment, a connection with that still blue flame inside of us. By the way, I eventually achieved that connection, but not by destroying all of my so-called defenses. After a year of this, I became a compulsive eater. I thought about mayonnaise all the time. I thought about spicy sausage all of the time. If I walked down a street and there was a restaurant, I stopped at the restaurant and read every item on the menu. If there was a bakery, I couldn't resist the sight of the baked goods inside the window. I didn't eat these things, but my mind was taken over by an obsession with food. I went through this for approximately a year and a half. I bloated up from 130 pounds to 152 pounds, something I had never, ever, ever been before. What was really disturbing was not so much the bloat of the body as the fact that my mind wasn't available for the things that I really wanted to dive into. My mind wanted only to think about food, and this was intolerable. Eventually, I realized that 3 meals a day might be a good idea. I went to a library. I looked up nutrition. I wrote down what you're supposed to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I started eating in a very measured way. I took a cup and used it to measure everything that I ate. I determined a strict number of the things that I had to eat. And all of these things were, according to the encyclopedia, things that would contribute to my nutrition. It was very, very hard to reestablish the habit, the automatic habit of 3 meals a day. It took me roughly 5 years. 5 years of self-discipline. The result was, in the beginning, when I started measuring my food and returned to 3 meals a day, unfortunately, I wasn't quite accurate about how many cups of stuff I should eat. And the result was I went from 150 pounds to 122 pounds in 2 weeks, all on the basis of self-discipline, all on the basis of self-control, all on the basis of trying to build and then maintain an infrastructure of habit. Because once you maintain it long enough, it becomes permanent inside of you. It becomes silent inside of you. It works without ever sapping the energies of your mind. And eventually I achieved it. And then I was able to stay at a stable weight. So have I never experienced the need to establish a regime of self-control about my eating? No, I have established a regime very successfully of eating, but it came from incredible self-discipline, knowing that you were going to have to struggle every day for 600 days in a row, or 900 days in a row, until finally your structure of habit took over the task and got you riveted to the proper amount of nutrition. As for what do I know about nutrition? A friend of mine called today and said, Bloom, you can't keep talking about things you don't know anything about. And he was specific about nutrition. Well, I got news for you. The diet that I conceived when I was 20 years old using the encyclopedia has worked so successfully that I'm now about to turn 71 years old. And though I know nobody believes this without a video, which I really can't do because I do this first thing in the morning, and if I had to set up the video camera, it would blow the whole thing. But first thing in the morning, I do these ridiculous push-ups. And 2 months ago, I reached 630 push-ups. 3 weeks ago in Tokyo, I reached 610 push-ups in a strange hotel room. This last week in California, I did 600 push-ups. Yesterday morning, I only did 500. But hey, at the age of 71, that's something. Does that indicate that what I've worked out as a nutritional diet works? It sure as hell does. If you want to know what my diet is, just ask, and someday I'll give you a video on it. It's extraordinarily simple. But the claim that I know nothing about establishing an infrastructure of habit, no, I know a great deal about establishing an infrastructure of habit, and I want you to learn how to establish infrastructures of habit too, because they are profoundly important. Now, how does this relate to Elliot Rodgers and the killings in Santa Barbara? One strange thing came up when the headlines were blasting us about Elliot Rodgers' awful, appalling rampage in which he killed 6 students at the University of California at Santa Barbara. And that was that the students at the University of California were going after, what did they call it? Were going after trigger warnings. They were asking that they be notified in advance by every one of their teachers when something traumatic was coming up in their homework, when something traumatic was coming up in their reading, when something traumatic was coming up in the course they were taking. For example, they didn't want any bloody scenes. They wanted to be warned when there were rapes. They wanted to be warned when there were outrageous and violent deeds, which means War and Peace would have had to have 1,500 to 3,000 warnings in it. The problem with this is the kids who are going for this are demonstrating that they have been coddled, that they have been treated as children. There was a story in the Atlantic in which kids who were super coddled, one kid who was super coddled went on her first job interview at the age of 21. Her mother went with her. Would you hire an adult who shows up with her mother in tow? I certainly wouldn't. The problem here is there's a real world out there, boys and girls, and a lot of it is violent, and a lot of it involves sexuality. It does. That's what nature has tossed our way. An obsession with sexuality, an occasional pairing of sexuality and violence. I mean, Elliot Rodger killed 6 people on the University of Southern California or the University of California at Santa Barbara campus because he was sexually frustrated. He didn't feel girls wanted to have anything to do with him. That kind of sexual frustration and its coupling with violence has appeared in history ever since there have been human beings. It also appears in lions and other animals who kill when they get sexually frustrated, who kill the pups fathered by other male lions so that they can possess the females. Sex and violence have gone hand in hand for a very long time. Literature reveals to us some of the aspects of how that manifests itself in the human psyche. If you're not up for studying that stuff, then you want to be coddled like a 3-year-old for the rest of your life, and that is unacceptable. The students at the University of California at Santa Barbara were using an external locus of control. What is an external locus of control? Those who feel they have control over their own circumstances have an internal locus of control. They feel that the location of control is inside of them. But there are those who feel that they are being manipulated by forces outside of themselves, that control is exerted by others on them, that they are not responsible for their own actions. Boys and girls, fess up. We all have to have an internal locus of control. We all have to take control of our lives to the best of our ability. The rape scenes in a novel are not things that we should be shielded from. If there is a trauma, it's up to us to digest it. It's up to us to process it. It's up to us to make it a useful part of our lives. We should not be treated as if we were third graders, with our parents going everywhere with us. Never. And there was another element of locus of control. Let me take a look at it in my notes here, aside from trigger warnings. Oh, it goes back to junk food. When you think that your problems with weight come from junk food and from the major corporations that are trying to cram that food down your throats with advertising, you're making a big mistake. The corporations that are advertising at you are trying to send you messages about something so delicious you can't resist it. But you can resist it. You don't have to buy the things that are advertised to you. The locus of control is inside of you, just as I had to take control of my eating habits when I was 21 years old, 19, 20, and 21 years old. You have to take control of your eating. It's you who eats a chocolate bar, not a corporation that shoves it down your throat. It's you who eats a Big Mac, not a corporation that shoves it down your throat. And Big Macs have nutritional value if you only have them once a week or less. The idea here, get a handle on your life. Recognize that the locus of control, the location of control, is inside of you. You have willpower. It is very, very difficult to use it, but you can use it, and you must. We have a big world with big problems to solve, and you are the solution. But get hold of your own life first. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make, or want to know why, ask how. And now for the off button. Yes, I've got it.